In this video, we've stepped up our hardware a little bit to what would probably be a entry-level budget computer, something new, but cheap. You're talking like a dual-core 2.8 or 3 gig processor. I'm using a 9400 GT, which would equal, say, a 6600 GT or 8500 GT or the HD 4550 by ATI, or it's your entry-level standalone video card, $50
Okay,
or so.
let's see how this one goes. Not bad in third gear.
I ran this both in a full screen 1680 by 1050 and in a 1280 by 720 windowed. Both windowed, just one's maximized. And we can see here the 1680, we went from a minimum of 27 frames, a max of 107 with an average of 63. And then in our 1280 by 720, we had a minimum of 38, a maximum of 114, and an average of 71. So, changing to a better video card, even though it's only a $40, $50 video card, actually makes quite a bit of difference in performance. Okay, in this video, our system would be comparable to buying a system for a little bit more money than what your entry-level cheapo would be. We're talking a quad-core processor, 3.4 gigahertz, 4 gigs of RAM, and a little bit better standalone video card. So let's give this a test and see what happens. And you notice the card drives quite a bit better. There's no glitchiness to it or anything, and this is with video software running in the background. Let's bump it up a gear. Fourth gear's nice and smooth as well. And here are the frame rates for stepping up to just a little bit better of a computer. You can see for our 680 by 1050 screen, we went from an average of 63 frames per second to 68 frames per second with a minimum of 28 and a max of 114. And then for our 1280 by 720, we went from, our last configuration was 71 frames per second average, and we've gone up to 75, almost 76, with a minimum of 420 and a max of 121. So not a huge improvement, but an improvement nonetheless. So what these figures and tests show me is that I have enough power that I can now raise my detail level a little bit to where I originally tried to have it, but I didn't have a computer that could handle it. So we'll go ahead and do that. I've already done it, but I'll show you what I did. We'll go to graphics, and I went ahead and set it to mid. This turns on your bump mapping, shiny, basic shaders. It'll turn on hardware skinning, shut that off. You need to have your draw distance at 256 again. It gave me a little bit of particles. You could really shut that off if you wanted, because again, you don't need it, but I don't know, maybe you have a car that smokes when you go around the corners and you want to see it. Set my objects to high, set my flex prims to high, maybe in case there's flags waving or something you want to see them. The trees, avatars, terrain, and all that, I just turned them all the way down again because you don't need it for racing. It's just a waste of resources. My hardware options, I went ahead and turned on anisotropic filtering and 2x anti-aliasing. So what this does is it gives everything a smoother effect and takes out the jagged edges. Again, you don't need it. If you wanted to leave them off, you'd get more performance out of it, that's for sure. And we'll go ahead and close this, but look, see now the car's all shiny and the way it's supposed to be. The paint looks good, all the chrome shines. The water sprinkler sprays water. All that neat stuff. So let's see how she runs. Oh, looking good so far. Nice and smooth, more detail. There's some rain. Ooh, another driver. That'll affect our FPS, that's for sure. Goes through the corners nice. And here are the frame rates for this computer set to a mid-graphics setting. You can see we went from an average of 68 frames per second to 27, at a minimum of 13, max at 40, and an average of 27 in 1680 by 1050 mode. And for our windowed 1280 by 720, we went from an average of 75 to an average of 35, a minimum of 21 and a max of 55, but an average of 35 frames is still pretty good. I mean, that's workable. So it would be up to you to decide whether you wanted it to be shiny and pretty, or if you wanted to keep it in basic and have the extra performance.